All right, thank you guys. Welcome to our MLB video here today. For Tuesday, May 11th, my name is Brock Page and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. If you want to see which one of these YouTube picks I'm actually betting on personally here today, don't forget to check me out on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage. Now tonight we do have ourselves an NBA tier package pick going off. We've won 5 out of our last 8 NBA tier package picks on that Patreon page. We're also hitting at 63% our last 16 NBA tier package picks in that very same category. We currently have over 1,150 members. We're signed up and active on that site. And if you want to join those folks and get in on the action, link for that page is in the description section below. And once again, that's patreon.com/BrockPage. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and get started. The Rangers take on the Giants, 3:45 Eastern start time. The San Francisco Giants are minus 160, totals 8.5, juice to the under. Logan Webb for the Giants, Jordan Lyles for the Rangers. Now, Lyles is just 1-2 on the season with an atrocious 7.09 ERA. The righty's walked double-digit batters already. He's got a whip of 1.64. Now, this Texas pitching staff is in the bottom 3 in hits allowed, bottom 10 in road runs allowed as well. They're taking on a Giants club who's tied for the most home wins in baseball. They're currently 13-4 straight up at Oracle Park, and they're in the top 3 in runs allowed at home. Logan Webb's also struck out 33 batters in just over 32 innings of work. And when it comes to the total on this one, 5 out of San Francisco's last 7 ball games got over the total of 8.5 runs. Meanwhile, 7 out of the Rangers' last 10 got over that number themselves. In addition to that, the Rangers are officially 11-7 to the over when they travel. I'm going to lean toward the San Francisco Giants minus 160 and the over 8.5 runs. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Cubs versus the Indians, 6:10 Eastern first pitch. Cleveland Indians are minus 190, number 6.5. Shane Bieber for the Indians, Albert Alzolay for Chicago. Now, Alzolay is 1-2 with a 4.50 ERA. The Cubs have also won just 4 of 13 road games. They rank dead last in the majors in runs allowed on the road. They also give up the most hits on the road out of anyone in the majors. They're taking on a Cleveland club who's 6-1 straight up in their last 7. And they cash in on the run line in 60% of their home games. And this Indians pitching staff is also in the top 10 in hits allowed, and they also find themselves allowing just 3.7 runs a game. Now, starting pitcher Shane Bieber, he struck out a staggering 77 batters already through just over 48 innings pitched. He comes into today's start with a 2.98 ERA and a 1.08 whip. Now, total-wise, 7 out of Cleveland's last 10 ball games got over the total of 6.5 runs. 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Chicago. Meanwhile, the Cubbies went 8-5 to the over in their 13 road games themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Cleveland Indians minus 1.5 and the over 6.5 runs. Next ball game, it is going to be Reds versus the Pirates, 6:35 Eastern Standard Time. The Pittsburgh Pirates are minus $1.25, total 7.5. JT Brubaker for Pittsburgh, Jeff Hoffman for the Reds. The Hoffman struck out 23 batters in just over 26 innings of work. The Cincinnati Reds are also leading the majors in scoring on average per contest. They're in the top 5 in hits on average per game as well. Jesse Winker's batting .359 with 6 homers and 17 RBI. He's also 4th in the majors with an OPS of 1.052. Meanwhile, Nick Castellanos is batting .314 with 9 homers and 22 RBI. The Reds have won 3 out of their last 4 ball games, and that includes a 14-1 drubbing of the Pirates yesterday. And speaking of Pittsburgh, they lost 8 out of their last 10 ball games, and they find themselves in last place in the NL Central at 6 games below 500. Now, the Pirates are in the bottom 10 in the league in hits on average per contest. They're also scoring just 3.4 runs a game. When it comes to the total in this one, Pittsburgh's gone 8-5 to the over at PNC Park. Meanwhile, the Reds are 67% to the over when they bat first. 22-10 to the over for the entire season. I'm going to lean toward the Cincinnati Reds plus 105 and the over 7.5 runs. Next ball game, Phillies Nationals, 7:05 Eastern start time. The Washington Nationals are minus 130, totals 9.5 runs. Eric Fetty for the Nats, Chase Anderson for the Phils. Now the Phillies have won 5 out of their last 7 ball games. 1 game back of the Mets for first place in the NL East. They're taking on a Nationals club who lost 5 out of their last 6 themselves. They also average just 3.6 runs per contest. Eric Fetty comes into today's start with a 2-3 record and a 5.27 ERA. Now the righties walked 13 batters and has a 1.32 WHIP. Now total-wise, 8 out of Washington's last 9 ball games stayed under the total of 9.5 runs. The Nats are officially 11-5 to the under as the home team and 20-10 to the under overall for the season. Meanwhile, the Phillies saw 6 out of their last 10 ball games stay under the total of 9.5 runs themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward the Philadelphia Phillies plus $1.10 and the over 9.5. Next contest I have for you, it is going to be Yankees versus the Rays, 7:10 Eastern first pitch. The New York Yankees are minus 130, totals 8 flat. Jordan Montgomery for the Yankees, Luis Patino for the Rays, or Patino, should I say. Now, Patino's 1-0 with a 1.17 ERA and a .52 WHIP. The Rays have also won 6 out of their last 8 ball games. They're taking on a Yankees club who dropped 2 out of their last 4. And they play just .500 baseball away from home. The Yankees have also struggled offensively this season. They're in the bottom 10 in scoring, bottom 10 in hits. Jordan Montgomery comes into today's contest with a 1-1 record and a 4.41 ERA. Now, total-wise, New York's 9-5 to the under as the road team, 21-13 to the under for the entire season. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay's 10-7 to the under at the Trop this year. I'm going to lean toward the Tampa Bay Rays plus $1.10 and the under 8 runs. Next contest, it is going to be A's versus the Red Sox, 7:10 Eastern start time. The Boston Red Sox are minus $1.25, totals 8.5 juice to the over. Nathan Eovaldi for the Bo Sox, Chris Bassett for Oakland. Now Bassett struck out 43 batters in just over 41 innings pitched. He also comes into today's start with a 3.70 ERA. Now the A's have won 5 out of their last 8 ball games. They currently find themselves in first place in the AL West. They're currently 8-4 straight up when they bat first. They're taking on a Boston club who's in the bottom 10 in runs allowed at home. And Nathan Eovaldi, he also comes into today's start with a 4.62 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP. And when it comes to the scoring in this one, Boston is 12-7 to the over at Fenway, 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Oakland. I'm going to lean toward the Oakland A's plus 105 in the over 8.5. Next ball game, still in that 7 o'clock slate. I'm talking about the Orioles versus the Mets, 7:10 East. The New York Mets are minus 155, total 6.5. Marcus Stroman for the Mets, John Means for Baltimore. Now Means is 4-0 with a 1.37 ERA and a .67 WHIP. The lefties also struck out 50 batters in just 46 innings of work. The O's are 11-6 straight up as the road team. They cashed in on the run line in 71% of those contests. Now, this Baltimore pitching staff leads the majors in fewest runs allowed on the road. They're taking on a Mets club who's one of the worst offensive teams in the majors at the plate. Bottom 3 in scoring, bottom 5 in hits at home. When it comes to the total on this one, New York's 11-2 to the under at Citi Field. Baltimore's 12-5 to the under when they bat first. I'm going to lean toward the Baltimore Orioles plus 1.5 and the under 6.5 runs. Next contest, it is going to be Royals versus the Tigers. 7:10 Eastern Standard Time. Kansas City's minus 130, numbers 8, juice to the under. Brady Singer for Kansas City, Matthew Boyd for Detroit. But as good as Boyd's looked, he comes into today's start with a 2-3 record on the season. And speaking of records, The Tigers actually have the worst record in the major leagues right now. They're just 10-24 straight up on the season, 5-10 straight up on their home field. Now, Detroit's dead last in scoring on average per game, and they strike out more than any other team at the plate. They're taking on a Kansas City squad who's very good on the road. They're winning 62% of their road games, and they're also in the top 5 in the majors in road hits allowed. Now, Brady Singer, he's getting the start here today. He's averaging a strikeout an inning as he comes into today's start with a 3.41 ERA. Now, total-wise, Kansas City's 9-4 to the under on the road. Detroit's 10-5 to the under at Comerica Park. I'm going to lean toward the Kansas City Royals minus 130 and the under 8 runs. Next ball game, still on that 7 o'clock slate. I'm talking about what is going on with the order of things here? There we go. Blue Jays versus the Braves. 7:20 Eastern start time. The Blue Jays are minus $1.25 on the road. Totals 9. Robbie Ray for the Jays. Bryce Wilson for Atlanta. Now Wilson's just 1-2 with a 6.75 ERA and a 1.92 WHIP. The Braves are in the bottom 3 in runs allowed at home, bottom 10 in hits allowed at home as well. They're taking on a Toronto team who's won 6 out of their last 10 ball games. They also rank in the top 10 in scoring. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is batting .310 with 7 homers and 25 walks. The slugger is also batted in 23. Meanwhile, Randall Grichuk is batting .295 with 6 homers and 28 RBI. The Blue Jays also have Robbie Ray on the bump for him here today. He comes into today's start with a 3.14 ERA and a 1.15 WHIP. Now, total-wise, Toronto's last 5 straight all got over the total of 9 runs. Meanwhile, Atlanta's 14-3 to the over at Truist Park. I'm going to lean toward the Toronto Blue Jays minus $1.25 and the over 9 runs. Next ball game, Cardinals, Brewers, still in that 7 o'clock slate. Still in that 7 o'clock slate. 7:40 p.m. Eastern start time in that ball game there. Milwaukee's minus 135, total 7. Freddie Peralta for Milwaukee. Kwang Young Kim for St. Louis. Now, Kim struck out 18 in just over 17 innings of work. He comes into today's start with a 3.06 ERA. The St. Louis lineup also ranks in the top 3 in road scoring. Nolan Arenado bats .281 with 6 homers and 23 RBI. Meanwhile, Dylan Carlson, is batting .303 with 13 walks and 56 total bases. St. Louis currently is 7 games above 500, and they find themselves in first place in the NL Central. They're taking on a Milwaukee club who plays just .500 baseball on their home field, and they also lost 6 out of their last 8 ball games. Now, Yelich is still out, and it looks like Kane, Bradley, and Kyura are questionable, so keep an eye on them. Now, Freddie Peralta has also walked 17 batters in just over 32 innings pitched. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, the Brewers are 10-6 to the over on their home field. I'm going to lean toward the St. Louis Cardinals plus 115 and the over 7 runs. Next ball game, 8 o'clock slate. Talk about the Angels versus the Astros. 8:10 Eastern start time. Houston's minus 160, numbers 8.5. McCullers for Houston, Ohtani for the Angels. Ohtani's 1-0 with a 2.41 ERA and 30 strikeouts. LA's also won 3 out of their last 4 ball games. They rank in the top 3 in hits. Mike Trout's batting .365 with 8 homers and 22 walks. The outfielder is currently second in the majors with a 1.177 OPS. Meanwhile, Jared Walsh has hit 7 homers and knocked in 29. Walsh currently has an OPS of 1.020. Now, they're taking on a Houston club who lost 5 out of their last 8 ball games, and they currently play just .500 baseball at Minute Maid Park. This Houston lineup certainly likes to swing, as they're currently in the bottom 10 in offensive walks at the plate. Starting pitcher Lance McCullers. He's also walked 18 batters in just over 32 innings of work. When it comes to the scoring in this one, Houston's 10-8 to the over on their home field, 21-14 to the over for the entire season. Meanwhile, the Angels are 20-14 to the over for the entire year themselves. I'm going to lean toward the LA Angels plus 1.5 and the over 8.5 runs. Next ball game, Twins, White Sox, 8:10 Eastern Standard Time. The Chicago White Sox are minus $1.15, number 7.5. Dylan Cease for the White Sox, Kenta Maeda for Minnesota. Maeda's just 2-2 with a 5.02 ERA and a 1.53 WHIP. The Twins are currently in second to last place in the AL Central, and they're just 2 wins better than the Detroit Tigers, who have the worst record in the league. Now let's get it out here, Brock. They're taking on a White Sox club who they're on a 3-game winning streak, and they also get the W in 60% of their home games. Chicago is currently 6 games above 500. They find themselves in first place in their division. Chicago's in the top 3 in scoring, top 5 in hits. Yermin Mercedes is batting .373 with 20 RBI and a 1.005 OPS. Meanwhile, Tim Anderson is batting .296 with 7 extra base hits and 44 total bases. Dylan Cease comes into today's start with a 2-0 record and a .237 ERA. He's also struck out 40 batters in just over 30 innings. When it comes to the number in this one, Chicago saw 6 out of their last 9 ball games get over the total of 7.5 runs. Minnesota's 11-4 to the over when they bat first. I'm going to lean toward the Chicago White Sox minus $1.15 and the over 7.5. Next ball game, Padres, Rockies, 8:40 p.m. East. Now this game is currently off the board. Looks like Dinelson Lamet for the Padres, Antonio Senzatella for the Rockies. Senzatella is 1-3 with a 5.76 ERA and a 1.55 WHIP. The Rockies have the worst record in the NL West right now. Actually, the worst record in the National League right now. They're 12-22 straight up for the season. Their pitching staff is also dead last in hits allowed, bottom 3 in runs allowed. They're taking on a Padres team who plays really well on the road. They're 10-6 straight up in their 16 away games, top 10 in road scoring. Trent Grisham is batting .293 with 5 homers and 51 total bases. Meanwhile, Eric Hosmer is batting .307 with 4 home runs and 20 RBI. I'm going to lean toward the San Diego Padres winning this one outright for some money line cash. Next ball game, Marlins, Dbacks, 9:40 Eastern start time. The Arizona Dbacks are minus $1.15. Totals 8 flat. Madison Bumgarner for the Dbacks, Pablo Lopez for Miami. And as good as Lopez has looked in certain areas, he's still walked a dozen batters already and has yet to get his first win of the season. The Marlins are currently on a 3-game losing streak, 7-10 straight up in their road games. Now this Marlins lineup strikes out 10.5 times a game on the road. They're taking on an Arizona club who's in the top 5 in home scoring. They have a winning record at Chase Field, as Drupal Cabrera has a .382 on-base percentage. He's been walked 19 times already. Meanwhile, David Peralta's got 24 RBI and 57 total bases himself. Now, total-wise, the D-backs are 8-4 to the over as the home team. Miami's 10-7 to the over when they travel. I'm going to lean toward the Arizona Diamondbacks minus $1.15 and the over 8 runs. And with that, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Mariners-Dodgers, 10:10 Eastern first pitch. The LA Dodgers are minus 230, number 7 flat. Walker Buehler for the Dodgers, Yusei Kikuchi for Seattle. Now, Yusei struck out 34 batters and comes into today's contest with a 1.09 whip. They're taking on a Dodger club who lost 8 out of their last 10. They've fallen to 3rd place in the NL West standings. This Dodger lineup certainly strikes out a lot. They're in the bottom 10 in home strikeouts at the plate. As good as Buehler's looked this season, the Dodgers have only been able to give the righty just 1 win overall for the season. Total-wise, LA's gone 8-5 to the over at Dodger Stadium. Meanwhile, Seattle's 11-7 to the over as the away team. I'm going to lean toward the Seattle Mariners plus 1.5 and the over 7 runs. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap, powered to you by my Patreon website. I like San Francisco minus 160, over 8.5. Cleveland minus 1.5, over 6.5 runs. Cincinnati plus 105, over 7.5. Philadelphia plus $1.10, over 9.5. Tampa Bay plus $1.10 under 8 runs. Oakland plus 105 over 8.5. Baltimore plus 1.5 under 6.5. Kansas City minus 130 under 8 runs. Toronto minus $1.25 over 9 runs. St. Louis plus $1.15 over 7. LA Angels plus $1.50 over 8.5. I'm sorry, LA Angels plus 1.5. That's a run line play over 8.5. Chicago White Sox minus $1.15 over 7.5 runs. I like San Diego winning their game outright for some money line cash. I also like Arizona minus $1.15 over 8 runs. Before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, one final reminder that we've won 5 out of our last 8 NBA tier package picks on my Patreon website. We're also hitting at 63% in our last 16 NBA tier package picks on that Patreon page as well. I'm going to lean toward Seattle Mariners plus 1.5 and the over 7 runs. With that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon. If you guys decide to get a package here today, just keep in mind, Patreon's going to bill you the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. Most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, happy Tuesday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.